5 minutes. And this was a passage, John 4. It was just incredible. This man in John 4, 46 to 54, here's a man who's, by anyone's standards, has everything you could possibly want. And except for one thing, his young son was seriously ill. And when you read this passage, which is very interesting, this is really the backdrop after Jesus had done his miracle at the marriage at Cana. We see Jesus, the Bible says that he leaves the area for just a little while. And then from verse 46, it says, once more he visited Cana in the Galilee where he had turned the water into wine, and there was a certain royal official whose son lay sick at Capernaum. When this man heard that Jesus had arrived in Galilee from Judea, he went to him and begged him to come and heal his son, who was close to death. So this man is rich. He's got everything you probably possibly want. You know, he's got the house, he's got the car. Well, they had camels and donkeys and livestock and other kind of things, but you get the idea. He's somebody who's got everything. He's got the money, he's got the wealth, he's got the comfort, he's got a house, he's got everything. But there's one thing that he did not have, and that is peace of mind, because he saw his son wither away. The child had contracted some type of fever, and the father watched this boy's life slowly drain away. The color faded from the young boy's face. The light in his eyes had become dim. So at times he stared but did not really see. And finally he lapsed into some type of intermittent coma. The father sees that death is but imminent, right? And so he goes and he does the same thing everybody else does. At the moment of despair, when you have nowhere else to turn, you turn to God. This man, full of misery, he's heard about Jesus. He's heard what Jesus did in Canaan, that marriage, right? He turned water into wine. He's never met Jesus before. But he had heard what Jesus had done, the miracle that he had performed. And once again, he heard that Jesus was in the vicinity. And so he goes to Jesus to make an appeal. The Bible says that he begged Jesus. And the interpretation of that word begged really meant that he kept begging, right? He kept begging, he kept it up. This basilikos, this man, this man who had this money, who's got everything that you could possibly want, falls at Jesus' feet and he keeps begging Jesus repeatedly to heal his son, right? To do something. He knew Jesus had the power to do it, right? He was indifferent to those who were around him, and that's what happens when something happens in your life, when you really need God to break through for you, when you need to really press into God. You don't care about who's around you. This man did not care. He was unaware of the crowd. The idea is that he kept following Jesus around. Lord, sir, heal my son. Desperately pleading for his son to be healed. This man would not go away from Jesus because he knew Jesus was his last hope. Right? He didn't try and pull rank and say, hey, listen here, carpenter, do you know who I am, right? This boy is young royal blood. Instead, this nobleman, he grabs a hold of Jesus. He grabs a hold of Jesus as much as Jesus as he could comprehend of his character. And pathetically, he cried, sir, come down before my child dies. He cries for mercy. Now, I like what he said. Jesus really, really spent too much time in going back and forth with this man. He just says to him, he says, go home, your child is whole. Think about that. So you may go, your child will live. It was just really interesting because it was a partial granting and a partial denial of it. The partial granting was, hey, Just go home. Your child will be whole. Your child will be well. He will recover. And the denial of that, the partial denial of that is, I don't have to go with you. Just go ahead and do it. Just go home. It granted him the healing, what he really wanted. But he also wanted Jesus to come with him. Jesus refused to go. And you know what he didn't do? He did not give the man a sign. Right? Because if you read the passage, it says you people always like getting signs. You just love signs and wonders and everything. And he says the prophet has no honor in his own home. He just wants signs. He just want me to show you something. He did not give this man a sign. He just said to the man, he said, go home. Your child will be well, will be whole. Now, the responsibility now befalls man now, and what is that? Is that, am I going to take him for his word, or am I going to keep pleading to say, you must come with me home first? I don't think, I believe you. I have to have you come into my home. Just a little sign, please. Just a little sign. But there was no arguing. There was no pleading. There was no trying to make a little deal here and there. Meet me halfway, right? He just went. He simply believed. And the thing about this is that this man was not at the wedding. He heard about what happened. He simply believed. Simply went in. Just simply believed. That's what it was about, and that's what it's all about, and that's why if you believe, you actually believe. If you actually believe God, you will act like you believe. And this man acted like he believed. Something radical happened inside this man's heart. There was something that was just different in him, right? And it's really a reverse of what happens in our world today. In our world today, we want to see signs of wonder. We want to see something physical. But this man, he didn't really have it, right? He really did not see what Jesus did. He heard about Jesus, what he did at the wedding, but he did not see with his own eyes. He didn't say seeing is believing. In our world today, seeing is believing. That's our mantra. I'll believe it when I see it. But this man believed it without even seeing it. He believed what Jesus said without even seeing what Jesus had done. In his life, believing was seeing. Even though there were 18 miles between where he was and where his home was at that moment, he had to walk 18 miles back home. He believed it. He believed what Jesus said. So this is we can really learn from this. Has God given you a promise? Has He made you a promise? Have you been seeking God for something? Is there something that you're asking God to do in your life? Do you believe? Have you received a word from Him? If you have, He does not need to give you signs and wonders. Just believe what He said. Just believe it. Trust Him in it. Risk your all on God. Do what is right and just trust Him with the results. That's what I say. One thing that was very, very interesting here as I close out, because I just had to break away in a few minutes here, is that this man went on his way and he just went home, right? He just went. He just kept. But the thing though is that he didn't go right away. That's one thing. We read our Bible too quick sometimes. So it says there, and Jesus says, go, in verse 50 of John 4, your son will live. The man took Jesus at his word and departed. While he was still on the way, his servant met him with the news that his boy was living. He was on his way home. And so when he inquired as to the time when his son got better, they said to him, yesterday at 1 in the afternoon, the fever left him. That's strange, isn't it? Yesterday. Well, what was he doing between yesterday and today? Verse 53 said, then the father realized that was the exact time at which Jesus had said to him, your son will live. So he and his whole household believed. So are you saying to me that this man, after receiving the word from Jesus to go home that your son would live, are you saying this man stayed? He didn't go home right away? What was he doing? He waited another, what? Couple hours. From where he was and where he lived, at that moment when he had received the word, it was just 18 miles. And it says that, the time here, it says that at the 7th hour, which is 1 o'clock. So if the man, at 1 o'clock when Jesus gave him the word, if he had headed home, it would take him 4 hours to get home. I'm sure he had a horse. But this is the next day, though. You know what that tells me? That tells me that this man believed Jesus right away. And so there was no urgency in the matter. He didn't have to go home and run home to check if it's indeed true that his son would live. He believed it right there at that moment because he trusted Jesus for what he said. He believed that Jesus had healed his son, and there was no urgency. He didn't have to run home. He didn't have to rush home. He didn't have to, get an Uber to get home quickly. He knew exactly what Jesus said, and he believed him. He didn't see, but yet he believed. I think we can learn from that. So why are you worried about a lot of things? You're worried about this, you're worried about that, you're worried about the other. And God is saying, cast all your anxieties upon me because I care for you. This man, he came with a petition. He supplicated. He petitioned Jesus. My child is about to die. Come home with me. And Jesus says, I'm not going to go home with you, but you can go. Your child will live. But he didn't leave Jesus because he wanted to spend more time with him. He wanted to get more in, to get to know him. He believed that his son lived because Jesus said it. There was no urgency there. Because the Bible says his son was healed the moment Jesus said it. But when the news got to him and he asked, the disciples, not his disciples, his servants were saying, yesterday, 1 o'clock. So, beloved, I leave you with this. Trust God. Trust in the Lord. Do not lean unto your own understanding, but in all of your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. Anyway, see you tomorrow, church. For those of you who may be joining us online, I look forward to talking with you in the book of Revelations. And if you're local, join us in church. It's 40